What's up everybody, Arg the Pirate here, and this is going to be a little bit of a different type of video. Now I know some of y'all have noticed that I have not been posting recently, and there are a few reasons for that. Today I want to talk about why. Now if you were in Saturday's stream, I've kind of told a few things, but today I want to break it down and give the full real reasons why I haven't been uploading and my plans for the future. Now, I am not sure how long this video is going to be. In a sense, I've turned the mic on, I've started recording, and I'm just going to talk and then cut it up and edit it together. So I have no idea how long it'll be. I'll throw some timestamps in the description or have a pop-up right here or something, and boom, you know, y'all can figure it out. If you're interested in the things that I have to say, great. But again, this is going for the Arg the Pirate, you know, crew, or the pirate crew. This is going for the fans, more or less, and not just the people that are coming here to learn guides, things like that. I'm really trying to speak to my OG pirate crew one more time. But, okay, let's get right in. Now, as some of you know, I started the Arg the Pirate channel in June of 2017, and from day one, I uploaded daily Paragon videos. Believe me, guys, the first video took me 18 hours to make, and I turned around and did it again the next day. I have, for Paragon, with the exception of like a couple of days where people got sick, I uploaded daily videos. And I covered everything from in-depth laning guides to hero builds and really anything a newer player, they could watch these videos and learn about the game. Yeah, I'll leave a link for the second video I ever made. It was an in-depth guide, or even the phase video, but very terrible audio, everything like that. But you could seriously watch this video and learn something about the game. That's been my goal from day one, and I did that every day until Paragon released their RIP Paragon letter, or Epic released the RIP Paragon letter. And guys, that was just crushing to me. It really was. And you know, not only did it, you know, ruin my favorite game, but the Pirate Crew's Discord server, you know, died instantly. You know, we had this very, very close community with you know, my YouTube page and, you know, in-game playing. If you go watch a lot of my old videos, I always say thanks to the people that are playing. You know, we just had this very tight community, and the day Paragon ended, that was really the last time I played with anybody, because Smite is just a different type of game. But I have been talking to Undying Games lately about Ethereal, and it has really made me miss Paragon and appreciate the different styles of these two MOBAs. And in this video, I hope to show off some of these major differences and explain why I have had just a loss of motivation and, you know, loss of just desire to continue making Smite content. And first up, we've got to talk about the laning phase. Now guys, this is where the super opinionated stuff starts, although it's all based on fact, and, you know, I will show clips and things like that. But this is where the opinionated stuff starts. This is where I talk about things that I do like, things that I don't like. So, if you're not into opinions, guys, you know, feel free to click somewhere else, and thanks for stopping by. But if you want to hear what I have to say, let's jump right in. Now, the biggest difference between Smite and Paragon, of course, is the laning phase. I mean, it's night and day. The first 10 minutes or so of the match is just completely different. While all MOBAs have a laning phase, whether you're playing League, Heroes, The Storm, Smite, even Battleborn, they all had laning phases, which were the key to setting yourself up for later success. Paragon's laning phase was like a game of chess. During laning phase, you would have to keep track of so many things. Counting minions, you know, you had to know your strengths, know your weaknesses, you know, which you still have those type of things in Smite, but you saved mana for engaging on heroes. You kept an eye on the timer for the river buff, so you knew when to push, when to slow farm. You would even make rotations to other lanes before the 5-minute, or once you hit level 5, you would start making rotations. That was a huge part of the game, was starting to make rotations at 5 minutes into the game. And the first 5 to 10 minutes were all about farming correctly. They were all about laning. And with all three of Paragon lanes feeling very unique, not only did the hero you picked changed the way you would approach the minions, but the hero the enemies picked changed how you would approach the minion wave. And that's just really not the case in Smite. In my opinion, Smite does not really have a laning phase. It's better described as a farming phase. Sure, each lane had its own strategies and own approaches, but for the most part, laning in Smite is all about who can farm faster. For example, if you're in mid lane, there are two ways of approaching the lane. You can pick up yellow, then clear your lane, and then go do your red. Or side camp or whatever. That's the way I typically do it, but you do have one other choice. You can proxy the wave and then go for the enemy red or go, pick up side camp or your red. Those are really the two ways you can approach the mid lane. There's no change. That's just how it's done. Whether you're playing Scylla, who, you've at level 2, you have great escape and, it might be a little bit easier for you to proxy that wave, or if you're playing someone like Vulcan, who, hey, you want to clear that lane a little bit faster, and you've got some pretty good clear, so you'll definitely be able to take down your red even if your jungler doesn't show up. You've got these options, and you do approach the lane a little bit different, but for the most part, the idea is kill minions as fast as possible. And that just wasn't the case in Paragon. It really wasn't. Laning in Paragon was a battle, and every hero had a unique way of playing their lane. Other than the 2 river buffs, gold buff, and aqua buff that spawned in at 3 minutes and then every odd minute after that, and that really only required a couple of basic attacks to actually take them out, all you had to do was concentrate on getting your last hits, where minions were treated like a real game mechanic and not just a simple bag of gold that you try to blow up because you're inconvenienced. Last hitting minions was an absolute huge part of the game, and there were really no stacking items or anything like that. The reason you went for last hits is because you got rewarded for it, and getting those last hits took skill. You had to master getting your last hits. Getting them actually mattered. And in Smite, that's just not the case. Every match, you would set out to get more last hits than you did the last time. The first wave showed up, you went out to get 6 last hits, and if you got 5, you kicked yourself. You punished yourself going, you can do better. You can play this better. What's wrong with you? Get that last hit. How did you miss that? You punished yourself for not doing it well. And in Smite, the only time you punish yourself is, I missed the back minions with Scylla's bomb or whatever. It's not the same. It's not the same. You're not pushing yourself to do better as much because the minions are such a minor inconvenience and last hitting just doesn't matter. Another major difference is team comp. In both Smite and Paragon, there are 5 roles or positions and 5 different classes to choose from. For the most part, in Paragon, each hero had one main position and one sort of off-spec position. That was kind of pre-V42, but until Revenant's release, which Revenant, all the heroes they released after him were just these crazy hybrid heroes. But anyways, Paragon had structure to their team composition. Whether you were playing at lower elo or MMR cap, lanes were reserved for specific classes for the most part. Not saying you couldn't find success with heroes outside of their design position. For example, Richter was a great support and solo laner, even though he was designed to be a jungler. Besides those few exceptions, ADCs, for the most part, got wrecked if they played mid lane, and mages suffered severely if they were in the solo lane. The structure, design, and balances made Paragon's team composition matter significantly. Smite, on the other hand, allows almost every god to play every role, whether you build a different starting item to offset damage taken in the jungle, or you're playing a hunter in the solo lane. You can simply win a lane by picking an unusual pick sometimes that just throws the enemy off and they don't know how to react. At high rank, Smite team comp matters much more, but the element of surprise is also fairly common and ever-changing. Although the argument can be made, Paragon had a fraction of the playable heroes And Wraith, Wukong, and Revenant were hybrid-type heroes with roles that dramatically changed throughout the game's lifespan, which, guys, I can't agree with that. It doesn't change the fact, though, that playing a mage in the jungle was almost unheard of, and not typically done even in Silver Elo. But getting belly flopped under tower at level 5 by a Bacchus that's building full damage and basically one-shots you, that does happen in Smite. So, really, you had positions for certain gods. Not saying you couldn't break the mold. If you were god level with that, if you were master Paragon level, which took, 150 games, if you were a master with those certain heroes, sure, you could play them anywhere. You could play, Countess support and find success with it if you were good with her. But it still doesn't change the fact that everybody couldn't run these weird builds just to throw the enemy team off and find success by basically being a Zerg team. Now, speaking of that one aspect of Smite I just absolutely do not like is everyone is a glass cannon, or has the potential to be a glass cannon. If you and your opponent in Paragon were the same level with the same deck, it came down to what was the better hero for that situation. For example, if a Morgish and Gadget were ever to go toe-to-toe, Morgish would win that fight 100% of the time because she was designed to be a one target type hero. But if you were ever in a team fight, Gadget would win that fight with her ultimate, her slows, her speed ups, and that sticky bomb that did a ton of AoE damage. Gadget was clearly the better choice in a team fight. So you really could pick your fights based on what that god's or what that hero's strengths and weaknesses were. The same cannot be said for Smite. If Ra and Poseidon were ever to box each other, it comes down to who landed their ability first, because you get one-shot by everybody. Paragon had no real one-shot heroes until V42, with the exception of Revenant, which, everybody knows he was broken from the day he came out. But anyways, besides that, even Countess, who was the closest Paragon had to a one-shot god pre-V42, still took more than 2 abilities to kill anybody. And you had to use a full kit rotation. That's an ultimate, her Dark Tide, her little swirly scythe, whatever it was called, and maybe even a Shadow Slip to actually take somebody out. And it didn't, she really didn't do much without her ultimate. But the big takeaway is Steel, who was more of a tank, he could never one-shot anybody. Even if you built him 100% damage, if you were at a comparable level with the enemy team, he could not one-shot. He was not designed to ever be able to one-shot. And that was balanced, because with the amount of CC he had, he was a team-based hero. You got into a fight, you stunned, you bull rushed towards your team, whatever. He was designed to aid your team in getting those kills and just sit there and take punishment because he was a tank. And again, that's just not the case in Smite. Now, have you ever ran across a full damage Ymir that starts insta-killing people at level 5? That's not fun. Especially when Ymir can play the jungle, shows up out of nowhere, and unless you have beads, which we'll talk about that more in a second, unless you have beads, you're going to 100% die. That is not a fun game mechanic, and it just isn't. While in Paragon, sometimes team fights took 4-5 rotations of your kit, and the beginning of the team fight sometimes lasted over a minute, where you could die, spawn in, and get back to the team fight before it even ended. They were just such epic fights. And in Smite, their team fights last until the first person dies. And usually the first person dies within a few seconds of the fight actually starting. It's a very burst one-shot meta that doesn't feel near as engaging. While full damage Ymir is a problem, the issue goes for all gods. One-shot Herc is not enjoyable to play against, period. Which is where the idea all gods can build all items and have the freedom to play anywhere is not an enjoyable concept. One thing Smite completely fails at is making deaths enjoyable or even fun. Uller using his full rotation on you to take you out at 25 minutes into the game, it feels bad. Simple as that. It feels terrible. And the only thing you could have done to avoid dying there was to beads or Aegis. That's it. There was nothing else you could have done because you were stunned for most of it. And trust me, we'll talk about Relics a little bit later, but the same can be said for a Thanatos. Having a Thanatos ult you and then 3-in-1 you in half a second feels bad. It's unenjoyable for both players. There was no skill involved there. You basically waited around 60 seconds for your ultimate to show up or to get off a cooldown, and boom, you get a free kill. And the only way that is fun is if you're trolling. Because me personally, I enjoy getting an engaging fight. But if you can go from 100% health to 0 health in less than a second, it wasn't fun. Now, don't get me wrong, dying is not fun. But when you die and you can think back and break down how you died and learn from it, like what you could have done differently, or, oh, I made this mistake, and you improve by dying, it is an enjoyable experience because you grow as a player. If you did not have any beads or Aegis up and didn't see that Thanatos flying in the sky, there is 100% nothing you could have done to avoid him killing you. And since you are stunned in silence, it doesn't even matter if you had an escape ability because you're dead anyways. This is not an enjoyable experience. Dying should be educational, but when there's nothing you could have done, you could have said, oh, I should have waited in tower until my beads were up. That still might not make you survive. Really, there was nothing you could have done because, hey, he can one-shot people because that's just how he is. That is a terrible and unfun experience. Now, of course, the flow of Paragon completely changed in V42, making one-shot heroes an issue. But for over a year and a half, there was never a true one-shot god. Every fight was potential to outplay, outmaneuver, and all while buying time until your team collapses or, you get to the safety of your tower or something like that. Every single engagement, you had potential to survive or flip the fight. And in Smite, that's just not the case. If they land 2 abilities, you're guaranteed dead. And it's just not as enjoyable. Now, one of my biggest issues with Smite is immunities, both items and abilities. Paragon had very few immunities, whether it's CC or damage immunities. Every time you hit someone with an attack or an ability, you were rewarded in some kind of way. In Smite, there is so many immunities, it's a strategy to waste abilities to force out immunities. And you have to form strategies around if a god has immunities or not. Just as I said before about being about there being enjoyment in dying, there is a significant enjoyment in landing a ability or a shot or just a perfect attack. There's nothing worse than landing a Scylla ult in just the perfect spot. Maybe it's over a wall or something like that. You just land it in the perfect spot to have a god immune it. That's one item that one single item didn't just take away your ultimate, but punished you for playing well. And it rewarded the enemy who clicked a single button by letting them live. That feels bad. Again, the argument can be made that it took skill to hit the button at the perfect time and you were out of position because you had your active up. But the idea that you can play hyper risky because you have an active up is a bad mechanic in my opinion. Items that take away from others are not fun. If there was an item that put all your abilities on CD, like, a new ability, a new relic, a timekeeper, and boom, you hit it and it puts all the cooldowns, it resets everybody's cooldown around you, it would not be enjoyable or engaging for your enemy And one of the biggest enjoyments is outplaying the enemy, not getting your abilities immune. Being outplayed is not immuning death. That is not outplaying anybody. Outplaying somebody is, surviving gank to turn around and kill them, not run away and use Aegis to survive. Now, with Smite the way it is, I can kind of understand the need for Relics and Aegis, like things like that. But I have never once had an enjoyable fight where someone used Aegis. The person using Aegis is either rewarded by surviving and, flipping the fight, which feels bad for the person that dies, or the Aegis, it might have just saved them for half a second and they still end up dying. Either way, it only rewards one person. It does not reward two people. And that just feels bad. Every time Aegis is used, it rewards and allows the user to play poorly. There's also relics that negate abilities and attacks, like Phantom Veil, and Odin. It shuts down Odin. Magic Shell, shuts down a ton of burst damage. And Shield of Thorns basically makes it where you can't attack somebody for, 6 seconds or something like that. Although Paragon did have items that resembled a lot of the relics, these specific items took an entire slot and were not cheap to buy. Honor of the Pure was a lot like Magic Shell, but it cost 9 CXP before you got the actual active ability. You could put it on at 4 points, but it did nothing until, or 6 points, it did nothing until you put those 3 upgrade points in it, making it a total of 9. Same with Quenching Scales. It was a lot like Meditation Cloak, but it cost 7 CXP. So these two items only worked mid to late game unless you rushed them, and rushing those items had consequences as well. Even post V42, when Thorned Yami was released, which is a lot like Shield of Thorns, it cost 8,000 gold to equip it and only worked against basic attacks. So it was an anti-tank item, not just an anti-everybody that wants to damage you item. Early game active cards promote snowballing, and with Smite having such a death ball meta, these free items encourage reckless playstyles. Because, you can invade as long as you have Aegis up early game, or, go kill the jungler when they're, trying to get their blue buff, or whatever. You can do these things because you've got a get out of jail free card. And hey, it might go on a 2-minute cooldown or whatever, but ain't no big deal. You got out with playing insanely risky without very little punishment. Lastly, we have to talk about the different stages of the game. Now, for everybody that doesn't know, V42 was the patch that pretty much killed Paragon. It was the beginning of the end, but before or pre-V42, comeback games were very, very common in Paragon. And they are almost non-existent in Smite. Whether that's due to constant surrenders or the current snowball meta, Smite does not feel like it has a true early, mid, and late game. Smite shines between 10 to 25 minutes. So before 10 minutes, it's terrible, it's boring, and it's Farmville. And then after 25 minutes, it's kind of the same thing. It just goes around to, silo picks do nothing. You need to get into a team fight to actually do anything. And if the game has not ended at that 25, 30-minute point, the game drags on until one of the teams just gets lucky and wins. With the first 10 minutes being about getting your items as fast as possible and then switching to an immediate in-game that's all about grouping and deathballing the enemy team, Paragon had a distinct early game with the solo lane towers falling between 5 and 10 minutes. Once that tower fell, that was the beginning of the mid game. Once that first tower fell, that was the beginning of the mid game, because that's when teams could start making rotations. You were stuck in your lanes, besides the jungler, of course. You were stuck in your lanes until that tower fell. But after it fell, boom, get out there, start playing those ganks. And that's when mid game started. And mid game lasted till about the 20-minute marker, where then you teamed up to siege down T2 towers by, either setting that lane and letting the minions take it, or just everybody grouping together and just diving it and pushing it down. Then the end game was decided by these big epic team fights over Prime or Fang, or just random fights that, happen like, hey, mid lane, and it turns into this huge brawl that was just so fulfilling. And you're like, yes, we did something. Now let's push this tower. No matter what stage of the game you played, there was always a chance for a comeback. You lost your tower at 4 minutes, that's fine. Slow farm to catch up with items. You died at 2 minutes? Well, that's okay too. Just get back into lane as fast as possible. You probably only missed a handful of minions, and you might even get a couple of minions from that wave. The enemy jungle stole your green buff? Don't worry about it. Tell your team to move on. Tell your team, hey, there's a guy running around with my green buff. Be careful. And then a few minutes later, go steal the enemy's green buff. There was always hope in Paragon. Smite, on the other hand, is sometimes helpless. If you are down 5 kills, spam F6 until everybody agrees. Your mid laner got poked out, well, you just lost the first 5 minutes of the game because your mid lane had to go back early. The solo lane got ganked at 3 minutes in, well, let's just hope they don't rage quit. That might be talking about the community more than the game, but the game is so strongly influenced by the first 10 minutes, it's understandable that, hey, I don't want to spend 45 minutes in this game that we lost within the first few minutes. There are a ton of other things that I didn't mention. One huge one being able to counter build without losing all the gold, without losing, 60% of your gold. You could counter build on the fly. That's huge. They've got a lot of lifesteal. Boom, put on some anti-lifesteal. They've got an Aurora, put on that one card that got rid of CC. You could do all of that on the fly without really losing anything. Didn't even talk about that. I didn't talk about the 2 different types of damage with different scaling, verticality, slow farming, setting lanes. There's so many major things that are just non-existent in Smite. And now, guys, I know this video might seem pretty ranty, but it's truly not. This is truly my thoughts. I really wanted to share my thoughts, my passions, my motivations, and my love of Paragon, and explain my slowly depleting enjoyment of Smite. Now, Smite is still a fun game, and there is a ton of people out there who really enjoy playing it on a daily basis, but I am no longer one of them. I really hope you all understand where I'm coming from, and I'm going to keep an eye out for Ethereal, guys. I will be returning when Ethereal releases. I want to see what it's like. It looks amazing. It's 3 lanes on top of each other, like you can fly. It's a MOBA. It looks awesome. I'm going to try it out. Definitely keep an eye out for it, and I'm going to, release videos and hopefully guides over it, right after it comes out, because I truly enjoy helping people improve, and that's what I've tried to do from day one. But I'm going to have to step down from Smite because I truly feel my lack of motivation is really affecting my content. Thank you all for watching, and I really hope with the content that I have made, if you're one of the Smite guys, I really hope that they've helped you and improved or looked at things in a different way. Sure, I know I'm not the best Smite player. I wasn't the best Paragon player. I just, I do have a little bit of knowledge that could help newer or, help people get a little bit better. And that's always been my passion. And I've tried to do that with every single video I've ever made. And I hope it shows. Well, thank you all for watching. I hope to one day see you all in the fields of Agora or something close to it. But right now, I'm going to have to take a break from creating content. I'll be back next month, November, when Ethereal comes out, and we'll see what happens from there. But thank you all for watching. Keep being pirates, and we'll see y'all in the next video.